Hey, what is up, YouTube? Today I wanted to go over a couple tips that could help you guys out when you're coding in Godot. Coding is one of those things where you learn a lot just by doing it, and over time, as you build better habits and create different things, you start to pick up certain ways that you can make your coding a little bit better. And so, this will be a culmination of some of the tips that I find pretty useful for myself that I would like to use more in my own work as well. So hopefully you guys find it useful and concise, and let's get right to it. All right, so first things first, you guys probably know how to toggle visibility. Say I have this control node right here, flasks. If I hit this, I can toggle the visibility like this, right? The reason this works is because it's linked to this visibility property right here. And what we're effectively doing is toggling this on and off. Now, let's say we wanted to toggle this inside a script, right? We can connect this. I'm just going to quickly connect this right here. And inside my ready function, I'm just going to do something like flasks.visible equals true. This might be a way that you guys might be using, but you can actually do this with this built-in method as well, .show. And if you look at it, it's equivalent to setting something to true. It's not a big difference, but over time it's going to save you a lot of key presses. It's cleaner to look at. Use show when you want to show something, and use hide when you want to set this to false. My flask is gone. Alright, so the second tip I wanted to show you guys is an early return. You can look at this function right here. Whenever a return button is pressed, it's going to run this line of code, right? And you're going to notice that I have this if statement at the very top, where if certain conditions are true, it's just going to return right at the start of it. And what some of you guys might be used to is a little bit more of a kind of like a more vertical. I don't know if vertical is the right word here, but you might be doing something like if in tutorial equals false, right? And you might lift this up by one tab. And then you might go like, hey, else return. So instead of making your code a little bit harder to understand, you can section out the return at the very start. Check for the condition where it fails, immediately return at the start, and by doing so, you're going to have code structure that is a lot flatter, like this. It's easier to understand that, hey, once these conditions have been met, your code is free and you don't have to worry about any other conditions. This will always happen unless something happens. Now for the next tip, funny enough, I just scroll down just a little bit and I get to see the very same early return right here. But I wanted to talk to you guys about if-else statements. If a condition is true, it returns. Otherwise, it's going to do something else, right? Else, something else. And the thing about the else is that you will always reach that second state if the if isn't true. Now that's kind of a handful, but what do I really mean is this else is the same thing as not having the else and just going like this. If this is true, then it's going to return out. Else, it's going to do this, whether or not I have the else or not. Now, is this always useful? No, I don't think so. I think it's probably a tool that you can use to condense and make your code a little bit more concise. But sometimes it is useful to section out something just so that you can visualize multiple states a little bit easier. But in this case, it is pretty redundant. And so I'm just going to leave it out and have it like this. For this next tip, I wanted to talk about magic numbers. You're going to see I have match slot type, which is a variable, and then I'm matching integers. And I don't really know what this integer is, even though I did comment it. That's the only way I do know. But we can make this simpler. We can reduce this comment right here by having something called enums. But before I do that, I'm noticing that I'm using this if, and I can use it as a early return. So let me show you by just refactoring the code really quick right here. If not item, return. And by doing this, I can eliminate this part of the code and I can bring this all down. Shift tab. And so now the code is overall flatter. I don't have to worry about the nesting that's going on. It's just, hey, there's no item here, get out. Otherwise, run this match statement. All right, so getting back to enums, let's create an enum just like we create a variable by starting it off as enum, and then we're gonna give it a name. I'm gonna say, for now, I wanna replace slot type, so I'm just gonna do new slot type, and it's going to be curly brackets. And now I'm gonna give it a state. So right here, book pouch slot, I'm just gonna call it book pouch. And then I can go say something like cell slot, something like this, yeah? And then when I'm matching something, I can just call it by doing new slot type. And then I can find whether it's book pouch or cell slot, it'll just be named so that you'll know, hey, this is the slot type and this is what kind of slot it is, instead of using 8. And these enums are integers, so this is 0, this is 1. So when you're doing the assigning, you should definitely follow it. If I were to do this properly, this book pouch would be the 8th element inside this curly bracket array. Okay, so now let's talk about naming functions, or naming things in general. You want to make sure that your code is always very readable. You want to understand what things are right away. Obviously, I don't do this very well. Just on this screen alone, we can see this onPressed function. What's being pressed here? I don't really know. Calculate trait bonuses, that's a little better. But you can see how if I just read this out of context, I might not know what it's doing. We want to avoid that. So we don't want to write functions. We don't want to call functions like function haha, right? Because when we read this, right now we know what it's doing, but maybe in like a month or so, maybe in a couple weeks, maybe in a couple days, maybe we've forgotten what the haha function is supposed to be doing. So find some way to be descriptive. Maybe you can follow some naming conventions. It doesn't really matter. Just try to keep it concise. One benefit when you keep things nice and concise and name things appropriately is that certain things become a lot easier to understand, such as when you're working with booleans. So let's have a variable exploration complete. So this is a variable that I just created, and it's a type boolean, right? Which means that it's going to be true or false. And the reason why this is a nicely named variable is because, say on this very vague function, I want to create another condition. If exploration complete. Now this is going to work for us. I'm going to pass it to get rid of that error. But this works for us because when we have an if statement like this with the boolean, it's basically checking if this is true or not. And so in this condition, this is like saying if exploration complete equals true, then pass. So this is what it is, and we can shorten equals true to just this, right? And so when we read this just visually, it'll be if exploration complete, parentheses, is true, pass. And we can also say, hey, what about the false condition? If not exploration complete, pass. This is the same thing as doing this right here. So you guys can see how if your variables, if your functions are named properly, it can make it very easy to read so that you can intuitively understand what is going on. And this is going to help a lot. And this is something that I don't do, but like a lot of things, like I showed you with my refactor, these are things that you learn as you continue to work, as you continue to code. And you're always going to learn to improve. And this is kind of how game development is, how coding is, or anything really is, where the more you work on it, the better you get at it. So hopefully some of these tips were useful to you. Maybe you can think about your own code in a slightly different way. Let me know if there's any tips that are super helpful to you. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.